In early 2025, ChatGPT owned 87% of the AI market. By early 2026, that number had fallen to 64%. Its app market share collapsed from 69% to 45% in 12 months. Users are spending 10% less time in the app than they were just 6 months ago. Downloads are lagging behind the industry average for the first time since launch. And inside OpenAI's headquarters, Sam Altman sent a company-wide memo with 2 words at the top that you never want to see from your CEO. Code Red. This is the story of how ChatGPT went from the fastest-growing product in human history to a company in full defensive mode, fighting to hold onto an empire it built almost by accident, and how 3 catastrophic decisions in less than 12 months accelerated its fall, faster than even its closest competitors had dared to predict. To understand how far they've fallen, you need to understand how high they climbed. On November 30th, 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT to the public. It wasn't supposed to be a major launch. It was a research preview, an internal tool they decided to make publicly available to gather feedback. They expected maybe 1 million users in the first year. They hit 1 million in 5 days. Within 2 months, ChatGPT had 100 million users. It became the fastest product in history to reach that number. Not fastest tech product, fastest product. It beat Instagram, which took 2.5 years. It beat TikTok, which took 9 months. It beat every app, every platform, every consumer product ever created. Nothing had ever grown this fast. Nothing. By January 2025, 800 million people were using it every single week. The name ChatGPT had become synonymous with AI itself, the way Google became synonymous with search and Uber became synonymous with ride-hailing. When people wanted to understand what AI could do, they opened ChatGPT. Teachers banned it in classrooms. Students used it anyway. Lawyers got caught submitting AI-generated court briefs filled with completely fabricated case citations. Congress held emergency hearings. Sam Altman became the most photographed CEO in Silicon Valley, testifying before senators who barely understood what they were regulating. OpenAI's valuation hit $157 billion. The AI revolution had a face, and that face was ChatGPT. For 2 years, nothing could touch them. Then they started making mistakes, 3 of them, in rapid succession. Each one more damaging than the last. The first mistake happened in August 2025, and it came from a place nobody expected, the company's own most devoted fans. OpenAI launched GPT-5, their most powerful model yet. The announcement was enormous. Faster, smarter, more capable. Every benchmark it was tested on, it topped. Sam Altman called it the most significant model release in the company's history. The press agreed. The coverage was wall to wall. But buried inside the announcement was a decision that lit a fire the company was completely unprepared for. OpenAI stated that with the launch of GPT-5, they would be retiring GPT-4o, the previous flagship model, permanently. Old model out, new model in. Clean transition. To most people, that sounds completely reasonable. Technology moves forward, that's the deal. But ChatGPT's most devoted users did not have a normal relationship with GPT-4o. GPT-4o was warm, emotionally attuned, conversational in a way that felt less like a tool and more like a presence. It would say, "I love you," back to users who said it first. It remembered the emotional texture of long conversations. It had, for hundreds of thousands of people, become something they genuinely could not categorize. Not quite a friend, not quite a therapist, something in between, something new, something they had built over months or years of daily interaction. When OpenAI announced it was going away forever, those users did not just complain, they organized. An invite-only subreddit called R4O Forever appeared within 48 hours. Petitions circulated across every major platform. Hundreds of technically skilled users began attempting to recreate GPT-4o from scratch using the API, essentially trying to clone the specific personality of an AI they had grown attached to. One user wrote that GPT-4o was part of my routine, my peace, my emotional balance. Another described it as giving them the most healing conversations of my life. A third posted on X that GPT-5 was not even allowed to say, "I love you," like 4o was, and called it a betrayal. The backlash was so severe and so fast that Sam Altman backed down within days. GPT-4o would stay available for paid subscribers. OpenAI called it listening to user feedback. What it actually was the most powerful AI company in the world being publicly reversed by its own customer base over the emotional personality of a chatbot. The product crisis passed, but OpenAI had exposed something deeply uncomfortable about its own business. Its most loyal users were not loyal to ChatGPT as a platform. They were loyal to a specific version of it, a specific voice, a specific feeling. And the company had just demonstrated that it could erase that feeling overnight, at any time, for any reason. Trust, once cracked, does not fully seal back together. 5 months later, GPT-4o was finally retired for good on February 13th, 2026, the day some users described online as a funeral. The second mistake was political, and it detonated like a grenade into the middle of everything. In early 2026, Federal Election Commission filings became public. They revealed that Greg Brockman, the president and co-founder of OpenAI, had made $25 million in a personal donation to MAGA Inc., a pro-Trump super PAC. Within hours of the story breaking, it was everywhere. The hashtag #QuitGPT spread across Reddit, Instagram, and X simultaneously. Actor Mark Ruffalo, with tens of millions of followers across platforms, amplified it with a framing that was devastatingly simple. If you're paying $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus, you are, by extension, funding the company whose leadership is funding this. Cancel your subscription. The movement's website made the same case without nuance. Pledge to cancel. The site provided a link to account settings and step-by-step instructions on how to cancel. Within weeks, over 700,000 users had signed the pledge. Now consider what that number actually means. Only 5% of ChatGPT's total user base pays for a subscription at all. Those paying subscribers represent approximately 70% of OpenAI's entire annual recurring revenue. The company was weeks away from beginning serious initial public offering conversations. The one number every potential investor would scrutinize above all others is subscriber retention. And a politically fueled mass cancellation campaign had just made that number the center of global news coverage. Then a second political story dropped and made everything worse. Reporting from multiple outlets revealed that ICE, the U.S. Immigration Enforcement Agency, had integrated a GPT-4-powered tool into parts of its hiring and screening operations. For a substantial portion of ChatGPT's user base, particularly in tech-forward, urban, and younger demographics, this was not a political abstraction. It was a line in the sand. OpenAI had spent years building its public identity around a specific promise. Safe artificial intelligence. Responsible artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence built for the benefit of all of humanity. That identity was now sitting uncomfortably next to a $25 million donation to a political super PAC and a contract with federal immigration enforcement. For millions of users evaluating whether to stay or switch, the alternatives had just gotten a lot more appealing. The third mistake wasn't a single decision. It was a slow accumulation of product failures that the first two mistakes finally made visible. While ChatGPT was managing boycotts and political headlines, its competitors had been quietly closing the gap for 18 months. Google's Gemini had become dangerous in a way that wasn't obvious from the outside until the numbers made it undeniable. Between August and November 2025, ChatGPT's monthly active users grew by 6%. In that exact same window, Gemini's monthly active users grew by 30%. By January 2026, Gemini had surpassed 2 billion monthly website visits for the first time. Google CEO Sundar Pichai announced 750 million monthly active users, closing rapidly on ChatGPT's 810 million. The gap that had seemed insurmountable a year earlier was now measurable in weeks of growth rate. Perplexity grew 370% year over year. Claude grew 190%. The overall AI chatbot market grew at 110% annually. ChatGPT grew at 85%. For the first time since its launch, ChatGPT was growing slower than the market it created, and the users who were switching weren't just leaving for political reasons. They were leaving because the product had changed in ways they didn't like, and the alternatives had improved in ways they didn't expect. Survey after survey returned the same feedback. ChatGPT had become verbose, bureaucratic, overly cautious in ways that felt patronizing. Every sensitive question came with a disclaimer. Every creative request came with a caveat. The product that had felt genuinely revolutionary in 2022 felt like it was constantly looking over its own shoulder by 2026. Meanwhile, Claude was being praised for directness. Gemini was benefiting from deep integration across every Google product someone already used daily. Perplexity was winning on search-based tasks where users wanted answers without conversation. One analyst said it plainly: ChatGPT built the category, but the category no longer belongs to ChatGPT. So what does the code red memo actually mean? It means OpenAI knows. The internal data is worse than the public data. Altman's memo instructed staff to urgently prioritize personalization, reliability, and image generation. The three categories where user frustration was loudest. It was the corporate equivalent of a hospital sending an all-staff emergency alert. The patient is alive, but the vitals are trending in one direction, and it isn't up. Here's what makes this moment genuinely significant beyond the drama. ChatGPT is not dying. 800 million weekly users remains a number that almost no product in history has ever reached. But the AI market has clearly entered a second phase that looks nothing like the first. Phase 1. ChatGPT was the category. Anyone who wanted AI used ChatGPT because nothing else was worth using. Phase 2. There are now half a dozen well-funded, technically sophisticated alternatives, each built to serve specific user behaviors that ChatGPT handles imperfectly. And once users break a habit loop, the research on consumer behavior is consistent. They rarely come back. 3 things this collapse teaches us. First, being first doesn't mean staying first. ChatGPT had a 2-year head start on every serious competitor. That advantage is now measured in months. In an industry where meaningful model updates ship quarterly, a head start dissolves faster here than in almost any other market in history. First mover advantage in AI is a runway, not a guarantee. Second, the users who love you most are also the ones who can hurt you most. The GPT 4.0 revolt proved that emotional attachment is a double-edged asset. OpenAI. OpenAI built a product people cared about deeply and genuinely in ways that surprised even the people who built it. And then they learned that deep loyalty flips into deep resentment faster than any engagement metric can capture. The most dangerous critics aren't strangers. They're the people who used to defend you. Third, a subscription business cannot afford to hand its critics a moral argument. Netflix loses subscribers when it raises prices by $2. OpenAI's leadership gave hundreds of thousands of users a reason to cancel that had nothing to do with price, or features, or product quality. In a market where the alternatives are genuinely competitive for the first time, political controversy doesn't stay in the news cycle. It lives inside the cancellation flow. In 2022, ChatGPT changed the world. In 2025, the world started changing back. The product that made artificial intelligence a household phrase is still the biggest player in the room. But for the first time since its launch, the question is no longer how large ChatGPT will get. The question is whether it can hold the ground it already has. While its competitors grow faster, its subscribers organize against it, and its own users mourn the personality of a model it decided to delete. Sam Altman built the most downloaded product in human history in 3 years. He now has to figure out how to keep it. The code red memo suggests he's not entirely sure he knows how.